Hi everyone. So this is the last video, right, for this week, and for the beginning part of Ruth 3, right? And when we last left off, we had come to that point where Boaz wakes up, he's asleep on the threshing floor, realizes there's someone sleeping next to him, and it's introduced, and this person introduces herself as Ruth and says, spread your wings over me because you are now a redeemer, right? A goel. Okay, and of course, this is referring to levirate marriage. Okay, so and this is what happens next. Okay, first tense. So, Vayomer Barucha at la Adonai biti. Okay, and he said, and this is very promising words. Now, certainly Boaz did not tell Ruth how she should proceed, as Naomi has predicted, but these are good, positive words. Baruch, blessed are you, right, to the Lord, my daughter. Okay, so all of these are very good. Okay, so he basically says, may you be blessed. Okay, and Baruch Ha'at, this is a reference back to, we've seen this before, right? There's lots of blessing all over Ruth in the short two preceding chapters that we've looked at. Remember that when Boaz is introduced, or when Boaz returns to his own field where Ruth is gleaning in Ruth 2, the servants, they kind of greet each other by saying, no, bless you to the Lord, right? So we already know that that Boaz is associated with blessing, okay, or part of God's blessing. Okay, we also hear this. Naomi reasserts this when she asks Ruth earlier, whose field have you been gleaning in? May he be blessed to the Lord, right? She says this, right? Again, emphasizing how the blessing to this family, i.e. the revival, the resurrection of the family of Naomi, will come through Boaz, who will be, and Ruth, both of whom will be used by God as a source of blessing to this poor widow. Okay, so this is kind of alludes back to other places in Ruth. And again, one way to read the entire book of Ruth is that it demonstrates, that Ruth is a kind of narrative story demonstrating God's hesed, right, which we'll come to in a minute, and also God's blessing for his people. Okay, and again, it does make you wonder again about the dating of this story, right? Is this story edited or changed, edited and altered to bring out the theme of blessing because the writers and editors behind the story are undergoing a period that they feel like is winter, right? When they are not blessed, right? Where they feel displaced, without a home, without security, whether there's, be it food insecurity or otherwise, okay? It's not why they brought this out, okay? Or is this to be dated earlier, right? This is all a kind of setup for the ultimate blessing, right? That God will sort of exhibit or use this family of Naomi to give to his chosen people, Israel, that is, i.e. David. Okay, is that what is meant here? Okay, again, you can play with dating. Okay, so he said, blessed are you to the Lord, my daughter. Okay, and notice this language, bt, which is what Naomi calls Ruth, right? So again, and then why does he use bt? Why is this significant? Well, also, for one, it seems to hint that he is open to accepting her, as taking her on as his family, right? Also, it tells you that whatever Naomi had planned, whatever plan of God that Naomi was able to figure out and to try to push, right? And Naomi fits this theme of women, active women in the Hebrew Bible, right? These women that it doesn't always turn out well, but who don't really lie still, right? They're always pushing to make sure God's plan come to fruition, right? Sometimes paying a very bad price for them, but in this case, not so much, right? It shows you that Naomi and Boaz are aligned, right? That all these plans, God's plan that Naomi figures out, that Naomi is pushing or willing to kind of take this kind of dangerous path to make come to fruition, that it aligns with that it's working, right? That it aligns with what Boaz is willing to do. Okay, so going onwards now, hey, hey Toft Hatzdeich, okay, hey Tov Hatzdeich Ha Aharon Min Harishon. Okay, so this is a comparative, okay, and the comparative is this mean here, right? So literally it says, for you have caused, this is, for you have made cause to be good, right? This is a hifil from, yod tav beit, which is related to the word tov, which means to be good. You have made it's better, basically, right? Your hesed. The first one from, the second one from the first one. So, you have to, again, make it nicer, right? For this, and this is how I would translate it, for this, later hesed, this recent act of hesed, right, is even better or greater than your first act of hesed. Okay, what you're doing now is even better, a better hesed, right? Even more hesed, right, than what you did earlier. And by this he means the gleaning, right? Probably this kind of, scrounging around for food. Okay, and he kind of explains it a little bit further, right? Labilti, and this is a kind of negative particle, for you did not. Okay, so you got to kind of, again, make it pretty. For you did not go after leket ahare ha bohurim. For you didn't go after. Now this is usually taken as young men. Okay, and some interpreters say, well, it's Boaz seems to be then therefore older, right? Now it's hard for me to think that Boaz doesn't have another wife if he is an older man, with an older man who is wealthy. Right. Now, it could signify, therefore, that, really, Boaz and Ruth, it's not like necessarily the happy ending that we imagine, they live happily forever after. It's more that Boaz is going to now really do truly function as a redeemer, having a son, giving Ruth a son in the name of the deceased. Okay. So it could be, that's why, certainly, how to, bahur means to be young, to be strong, to be kind of strapling, right? So it's hard to know exactly what he means here. He may be saying, blessed are you, it's better that that you went after me, who's not as young, an older fellow. I'm not sure if that's exactly what he means. Okay. But I don't know. Okay. Certainly there is an emphasis on age a little bit, right? Because of course with Naomi, right, she says that she's too old to give Ruth and Orpah another son to act as a kinsman redeemer. So it could be kind of reference to that, right? But I don't know. Okay. So he says, whether, now going on, im dalva im ashir. Okay. So he says, your first act, your later, this act of hesed is even better or greater than your first act of hesed, in that you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. Okay. And again, is he kind of being kind of falsely humble, right? Is he saying that, oh, she could have actually found another husband, right? So she really could have, is what he's saying, she could have left Naomi and kind of found another husband. Is this referring to the fact that Ruth chose to follow Naomi to Israel instead of returning to her own father's house, finding a new husband, having a new kid, because of course she's still able to have children, right? Is this what he's referring to, right? So he's saying something along the lines of, this act of this, what you're doing now is a greater hesed because you could have potentially ruined yourself. I mean, nobody would marry you if they found out what you did, but instead you took this great risk, right? Instead of finding a husband, you being young, to seek me out, so that you can perform this great act of hesed for your mother-in-law, who would have, who would just have been a widow without you, right? In searching out Boaz as a kinsman, right? Now, again, one of the questions I asked is, how does what Ruth do here a kind of greater hesed, right? I mean, what does hesed mean? This kind of untranslatable word. And it seems to be that kind of in this final or this new kind of vision of the word hesed, that it involves risk, right? That this is a greater hesed because this is risky, okay? So hesed really is, implies a kind of selfless act that you undertake for another's behalf, though you have nothing to gain. Because as Boaz says, she could have just went off and married somebody younger, right? And without, bothering with this whole redeemer kinsman stuff. I mean, that's really for Naomi's benefit, right? Selfish, so there's risk involved, right? You take on danger on behalf of someone else, right? And of course, this has implications because, of course, human hesed reflects God's hesed or vice versa, right? So, this has implications for how we understand what they mean when they talk about God's hesed, right? And you'll say, well, where's the risk in God's hesed? How can God undertake a risky act on behalf of another? Well, you can, and again, you can play with this a little bit. Well, that fact that he's using fallible human beings at all, like Boaz, right, who seems rather slow to act, right, on some levels, right, or Naomi, right, who has a plan, but she's not sure whether it's going to come exactly to pass, and that God's risk in his acts of hesed is the using of human beings, right, through as a conduit for his hesed, because human beings, of course, are tricky and dicey, and they're unsure. They don't always do what you want them to do. Okay, so that might be what is being kind of hinted at here. Okay, so going onwards. Okay, va'ata biti al tiri, right? And he says, now my daughter, don't be afraid, right? And you do wonder whether this is like, when angels show up, they always say, don't be afraid, right? So he's saying, it'll be okay. Okay. Kol asher tomri e'eseh lach. Okay, because don't be afraid, because everything, right? And remember the everything language, right? That you say, this is exactly what Ruth said to Naomi. Everything that you say, I will do for you. Okay, and notice that again, Boaz is mimicking what Ruth said to Naomi. Everything you tell me to do, I will do. Okay, and so that everybody's kind of, you get the sense that everything is coming into alignment. Okay, key, because Yodei, know everyone, kol sha'ar ami, because knowing, this is kind of is a participle from yo dalet ayin. Remember yada, this word over and over and over again. Okay, blew that or whatever. Okay, because everyone who knows now use yada, know, in the third kind of another sense, right, or the more literal sense. Now everybody, because everybody knows, right? Who is this everybody? Kol sha'ar ami, all at the gate of my people, right? And basically he's talking about the Israelite community there, because everyone in this community, they know, okay, ki eshet hayilat, that you are a woman of, it literally says a woman of strength. Okay, and this, a couple of things here. The yada now used in a kind of third way, right, as general knowledge about reputation, right, about how everybody sees what Ruth is doing, and though she is an outsider, that she's been accepted to some degree, right, as somebody who is good, right, hardworking, working on behalf of her mother-in-law to almost no benefit for herself, right? And so therefore, with these qualities, they've accepted her into their community, right? And then this reaffirmation of that in Boaz's description of Ruth as an Eshet Hayil. Now, this is a loaded term, Eshet Hayil. Okay, so first of all, we have seen something like this before, right? When in Ruth 2:1, when Boaz is first introduced, he is described, matching this language, as a Gibor Hayil, a rich man or a man of strength. Okay, and so this Eshet Hayil and this Gibor Hayil, of course, this tells you that Boaz and Ruth are a good match, right? They're kind of reflective of each other. Okay, Eshet Hayil is also a kind of code word, almost a phrase used to describe the ideal, wise, hardworking woman. Okay, and you see this in Proverbs 31, verse 10 and following, and which begins in the following way, and it begins with a good wife, a Eshet Hayil, who can find? Okay, and I would go with, you can do a couple of translations with Proverbs 31, verse 10, who can find a good wife? Or where can such a wife be found? Where can you find an Eshet Hayil? Okay, and it goes on. She is far more precious than jewels. She does them good and not harm all the days of her life. And then, not very modern, it goes on with this list of describing what an Eshet Hayil looks like. And it's like basically this woman of strength, okay, or woman of valor, sometimes how it's translated. Basically she like works and is like all the time. Okay, so she's like working 24/7 for the good of her household. Okay, again, this is patriarchal literature, right? It's not gonna, what's really interesting to me is the fact that Eshet Hayil, right, this woman of valor, woman of strength, that it's used to describe Ruth, who is a foreigner here. Okay, and so this ideal woman, right, is now reflected or utilized to describe a woman who is not Israelite, right? And again, this idea of seeing the self in the other. Okay, you can also do kind of more sort of bigger interpretive leaps or stretch the interpretation a bit. You can say in Eshet Hayil, the fact that it is used to describe this hardworking woman of valor, to describe Ruth, who is an immigrant, right, and a foreigner, right, is actually just describing the kind of hardworking nature of immigrants, of people that are poor. How much, it reflects how not only are they hard workers, but how much harder they have to work, especially the women, the poor, the elderly, these disenfranchised, to be secure, to have enough to eat, to have enough. Okay, and so there's a kind of double meaning there. Okay, and now it ends. The last va'ata ki amna. No, that's not right. Va'ata ki omna. Okay, ki goel anoki. Okay, and now be assured. Okay, now now be assured, or it is certain, ki goel anoki, that I am a goel and a redeemer. Now it's true. Okay, again, this emphasis here. Now it is true that it is certain that I am a goel, a redeemer, but you have this but, right? Remember, verbs can be destructive, but, or conjunctive, and in this case, but makes more sense. But gam yesh goel karov mimeni, right? This is again a comparative name. However, a little snafu in the plan. Also, there is another redeemer nearer than me, closer than me, probably more related. Okay, and therefore, who, as we'll go on to see, should get kind of first rights to becoming a goel. Okay, now this word, this is from the word ayin mem nun. It means to make confirm, to make firm, to make certain. Okay, used kind of adjectively here. This is where we get the word amen. Right? Let it be certain, let it be made firm, let it be confirmed, right? This is what you're saying when you say amen, okay, or amen, okay? So now, when you get to this point, we're like, there's a little bit of an obstruction. Of course, this adds dramatic, tilt to the work, right? I am a goel, I'm a redeemer, but before I can redeem, I have to check with the closer, this other goel. Okay, and so so I leave off with a bit of a cliffhanger, and we will see what happens next with Naomi's plan, which will now be enacted by Boaz in the next video.